Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tirambana Chari Jamuna Tirambana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janabala Bhagiri Varadhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tirambana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janabala Bhagiri Varadhari Gaur Premanandi Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Everyone together, please. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Praishva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Attendance and classes on the Bhagavata, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Before we start, I'd really like to introduce Shyamananda Krishna Prabhu, but he seems to have vanished. Is he laboring in the Pujoy room? Let's see. Umesh immediately puts him to work. He just, Shyamananda Prabhu, could you kindly reveal your transcendental form for just a moment? Hey, Bo. It's a very auspicious occasion to have Shyamananda Prabhu here. He's from Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is the second largest city in Michigan. Actually, it's on the west side of the state by Lake Michigan, and a big university there. So Shyamananda Prabhu was a student of robotics at Michigan State University, doing his master's, was it? Or master's, when he met devotees and had his life completely ruined, right? So he had been going from the temple near Detroit, where he was based, to Grand Rapids for some years and developed a very nice congregation, some wonderful devotees there. And he's like Rukmini in this respect. Rukmini never saw Krishna. She just heard about Krishna and wanted to marry him. So Shyamananda Prabhu had never been to Krishna House. He just heard about Krishna House, met a few Krishna House devotees in New Vrindavan. And he decided we want to have a Krishna House in Grand Rapids. And so with his congregation's support, they raised money and bought an apartment house not far from the campus with 9 rooms. And they converted the downstairs into a beautiful little temple room. And there he, 9 months ago, began starting an ashram project. See, generally congregations want to build temples because it serves their families very well. But this congregation said, we really want to reach a broader audience. We want to reach young people. And so Shyamananda is a very courageous gentleman. And now he's come to visit the original Krishna House here in Gainesville to kind of soak it up, see how it works. What are your impressions so far, Prabhuji?
I'm just very, very grateful for I heard seminars in North America leadership. And that's where it clicked. Like I remember 4 days back, I was in leadership training in Mayapur.
Oh, sorry.
4 years back, I was in leadership training in Mayapur. And we wanted to have a project. We were not sure what do we want to do in Ganga. And the devotees were telling we want to temple, want to temple. And I was really trying to check in and out of the day. I was there for 3 months. And our desire was we want to introduce local people to Krishna consciousness, the Western world to Krishna consciousness. And there was no spark. So many thoughts were coming, what to do, and years were just passing by. And then when I heard your seminar, then something clicked. And then we gathered the congregation, and then with the congregation, we played your seminars. And after every seminar, we would have a 2-hour discussion. What do you think? And then gradually, the congregation came to the point, if we want something Grand Rapids, it should be Krishna House. And then we contacted you, Prabhuji, that Prabhuji, this is what we want. And then it took almost a year before we were looking so much for the property, and then almost few months of renovation phase. And it's a long journey. Wow. And finally, we did the opening 9 months before. And we are just grateful because you showed by an example, and we're just trying to follow your footsteps, Prabhuji. And if anything that is happening is because of your grace, Prabhuji.
You are very, very generous. All we're trying to do is what Srila Prabhupada did in the early days of ISKCON, the good old days. And it's really wonderful. You have that vision, and now you have 8 people regularly chanting japa, right? And several people have had living experiences, and it's just really getting rolling. So thank you so much. Very glad you could visit us. Good time to visit in January, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So we are in the study of the 9th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. And much of this canto is dedicated to the genealogy of Krishna, his whole family background, all of the lineages, excuse me, of leading up to the 10th canto, where we'll meet Krishna personally. Well, that's all right. So the chapter 9 of the 9th canto is called the Dynasty of Amsumam. And if you recall, on Friday, Madhumati was speaking about the Ganga, how the sons of, who is the sage? I forgot. Anyway, Lord Kapila Dev, the sage, had cursed these Kshatriyas, or these who were trying to find the horse, the challenge horse. Sagar, the sons of Sagar. Sagar. Oh. Okay. What is the difference? Sagar is ocean. Sagar means what? You know?
Sagar means ocean.
Ocean. Okay. So the sons of Sagar, who had offended Kapila and were burnt to ashes by his mystic power. So all of the descendants were trying to liberate them. One after the next, they were trying to find some way to relieve the offense that their ancestors had committed. And one generation after the next failed until Bhagirath managed to convince Ganga, please come and bless the ashes of my foolish predecessors. And so Ganga said, no way, I'm not going to Earth. She said that if I go to Earth, first of all, the weight of my waters, Ganga is the river, will just crush the Earth and will pass right through the hellish planets. I don't want to do that. And then Bhagirath went to Lord Shiva and said, would you please catch Ganga? He said, yes, I'll catch her, no problem. So that problem was relieved. But then Ganga said, if I go to the Earth, all these sinful people will bathe in me and I'll get all this karma in my waters. And Bhagirath said, don't worry, the sages, the sadhus will also bathe and they will absorb all of these sinful reactions. So in this way, he convinced Ganga to come, and the sacred Ganga river blessed the ashes of the sons of Sagar, and they were able to be relieved of their offense and ascend to the heavenly planet. So most of the topic of this chapter is summarized like that. So there's a few more episodes, but I'm not going to go into them this morning. What I wanted to talk about is the theme of offering Ganga water to the Ganga. So we'll skip this and go right to verse 12. Yeah, I think we've done enough summary there. Okay. Everyone can kindly repeat. Yajchala sparsha matrena Brahma danda hata api Sagarat majadivam Sagarat majadivam jagmu Kevalam dehabas mabi Yajchala sparsha matrena Brahma danda hata api Sagarat majadivam jagmu Kevalam deha basmabi. Please, Jen.
Yajchala sparsha matrena Sagarat majadivam jagmu Kevalam deha basmabi.
Kevalam deha basmabi.
Yajchala sparsha matrena
Kevalam deha basmabi. Matrena Ramadanda Hatati. Ramadanda Hatati. Sagarat majadivam jagmu. Anybody else? Okay. Say the synonyms together, please. Yajchala, whose water, sparsha matrena, simply by touching, Brahma danda hata, those who are condemned for offending Brahma, the self. Api, although Sagara Atmaja, the sons of Sagara, Divam, to the heavenly planets, Jagmu went, Kevalam only, Dehabasmavi, by the remaining ashes of their burnt bodies. And translation together. Because the sons of Sagara Maharaj had offended a great personality, the heat of their bodies had increased and they were burnt to ashes. But simply by being sprinkled with the water from the Ganges, all of them became eligible to go to the heavenly planets. What then is to be said of those who use the water of Mother Ganges to worship her? Purport, would you like to read? No. Kevin, can you read?
Mother Ganges is worshipped by the water of the Ganges. A devotee takes a little water from the Ganges and offers it back to the Ganges. When the devotee takes the water, Mother Ganges does not lose anything. And when the water is offered back, Mother Ganges does not increase. But in this way, the worshipper of the Ganges is benefited. Similarly, a devotee of the Lord offers the Lord Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, a leaf, flower, fruit, or water, in great devotion, but everything, including the leaf, flower, fruit, and water, belongs to the Lord, and therefore there is nothing to renounce or to accept. One must simply take advantage of the bhakti process, because by following this process, one does not lose anything but gains the favor of the Supreme Person.
Try. So the Ganga originates in the Himalayas, which are the largest mountains in the world, and they have huge glaciers and accumulate much snow. And when that snow melts, it flows down the Ganga plain through India and out into the Bay of Bengal. So that the Ganga is considered the most sacred of all the sacred rivers in India, and it is glorified and celebrated in the Srimad Bhagavatam in texts such as these. The hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is compared to touching the Ganga, actually, because if we just hear this pure sound vibration, it's like being purified in the water. So we're, in a sense, we're bathing in the Ganga every time we go to Bhagavatam class, every time we open Bhagavatam and read. May I share a couple of experiences from my life with you this morning? I had this opportunity to go to the Ganga in for the first time in 1975. I was 21 years old, or 20 years old. And we were, at that time, the Ganga was nearly a mile away from the Mayapur temple. Today it runs right up adjacent to it, but the Mayapur land there, the river moves all over that plain. And at that time, it was quite a distance away. So a group of us walked out to bathe in the Ganga, and we walked through many, many rice paddies, which are little pools of water with the rice plants growing. They have to be submerged. And the farmers painstakingly made these mud walls between the paddies. And so we were kind of tromping on these mud walls. I don't think they appreciated it, but there was no path. It was the only way to get there. So we made our way down to the Ganga. And I had been hearing about the Ganga for a couple of years. And so it was a very natural, beautiful spot. There was no one around and except us. And so we all put on our gumshoes and got in the water. And I had been swimming hundreds of times in my life. But when I got in that water, I was struck, like viscerally struck with the celestial sensations. The celestial is the only adjective that comes to mind, but it was astonishing. I was completely not expecting. I thought I was just going to take a little dip. No, suddenly I felt my spirit jolted awake. And so that was my first encounter with the Ganga. Now, the Ganga is that potent and pure that it is so pure you cannot worship her in any way except offering Ganga water back. So the Ganga is a big river. It's about the size of the St. John's in Jacksonville, if any of you have seen that. You know, there's a big river when you enter Jacksonville, you have to take a bridge across it. That's like the size of the Ganga, really massive. And so when you take a palm full of water out of the Ganga, she's not hurt. She's not missing it. And similarly, when you offer it back, she's not like, oh, I'm so glad to have that back. It's very insignificant. It does not affect the Ganga, but it affects the worshiper. So now, these days, when you go to Mayapur, the Ganga is right near the temple. How many of you have been there to the Mayapur temple? Okay, so you bathe in the Ganga. It's just a short walk over, right? And there's a big ghat, and there's all kinds of salesmen and and a lot of people around. And it's a different mood. But I had this other encounter with the Ganga a few years ago. When my father passed away, my sister and I split his ashes. So she took her half to the football field at the University of Alabama, where he was an alum, and scattered them on the football field. And I took my half to the Ganga, to Mayapur, and with one of the kind devotees there, went out. We got in the water in our gumshas, and he did this beautiful ceremony. It was so nice. I was really struck. He would repeat the mantras. He'd say the mantra, ask me to repeat them, and then explain. So the series of mantras is basically invoking the goddess Ganga to please come. I'm offering you flowers. I'm offering you puja. I'm offering you all these things. Now, please take this soul in your lap. And it was so very sweet and fulfilling to do that service for my father, the ashes of my forebears. So returning him to the Ganga. So this is the power of the Ganges, that she can purify even the unpurified. So now we have this process of bhakti, offering everything to the Lord who doesn't need it. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada invokes this verse from the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhakti prayachati. This means that Krishna is saying, if one just offers me a fruit, flower, leaf, leaf, flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. If it's offered with love, I will accept it. This is very important. Generally, we think about God in a formal way, that he is powerful and he's supreme, and if I'm a theist, I accept him. I accept him and I try to be nice to people. This is pretty much theology in the contemporary world. But the Gita takes us so much farther. We understand that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. And yet, if we take some simple thing that is already his property and offer it to him, he accepts it. And because he accepts it, we're benefited. Now, the sequence of items listed in that verse are very scientific. Patram pushpam palam toyam. Patram is leaf. Leaves come out in the spring, right? In a four-season environment like ours. The leaves will bud, the plants will put out their leaves to capture the early spring sunshine, and then after some time they'll produce a flower. So the flower then yields to a fruit in the fall, and then the fruit is harvested, winter sets in, all the leaves are gone, flowers are gone, fruits are gone, but you can still get some water. Okay. So there's no time of year where there isn't one of these simple items available. This is Krishna's magnanimity. So all we need to do is take that palmful of water and offer to the Ganga. All we need to do is take that leaf, flower, fruit and offer it to Krishna. And Krishna is so kind that he accepts that. Now, what are the benefits that we get from having this reciprocation with God? It's not just a matter of believing in God. Okay, he's there and I'm afraid of him and I'll be good. But no, I am actively engaging and involving him in my life, in my day-to-day, in my moment-to-moment decisions. Take chanting, for example. Chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Such a simple thing. What are we doing? We're engaging our voice, we're engaging our oxygen, we're engaging our tongue and our vocal cords in saying Krishna's name. And Krishna enjoys hearing his name, and he's not ashamed to admit it. Okay. He takes pleasure from that. So we are taking what Krishna has given us, our bodies, our voice, everything, and we're offering it back to him. That is that reciprocation, just in something as simple as chanting, or in hearing about Krishna, or in doing some service for Krishna. All of this is offering Ganga water back to the Ganga. It's giving of our energy back to Krishna, who doesn't need it, but kindly accepts it. So what is the result of all of that reciprocation that we give to Krishna? There's a beautiful list in the Bible. I have to use my phone to quote the Bible Shastra here. It's called the fruits of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. These are the fruits of the Spirit. When we are offering to Krishna, these are the qualities that begin to manifest in us. In the Sanskrit parlance, it's called anartha nivritti, that the unwanted habits, the bad qualities, start to kind of evaporate, and the good qualities start to manifest. This is when Krishna consciousness really started to hit me, and I think many of you have this experience also, that when it starts affecting us to the point where like self-defeating behaviors that we've indulged in for years and years and years suddenly begin to lose their grip on us. Our addictions to substances, our addictions to egoistic behavior, our mistreatment of other people, our prejudices, our biases that cause us to be uneven in our dealings and therefore agitated within. All these things start to just kind of evaporate. And the yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati kinchana, the good qualities, the fruits of the Spirit start to manifest. That's what's in it for us when we offer the Ganga water back to the Ganga. The adventure of spiritual life starts to unfold. Now, the happiness derived from that experience is really not comparable with anything else that we experience, confirmed. In the Gita, Krishna describes it as not only sukham, happiness, but susukham, happiness on steroids. It is happiness that reaches a very deep part of ourselves that for many of us has not been experienced since childhood. You know, little kids, when they're 2, 3 years old, they're either crying or they're bliss balls. One of the two, you know. You bump their head, they're crying. Otherwise, the rest of the time, because they're discovering, and everybody, if they're in a nice family, everybody's good to them. Okay, what do you want? What do you want to eat? What do you want to do? Okay, we'll do this. The world is completely there for their enjoyment, and therefore they're feeling very happy. And parents want to keep the child happy, and then they grow up. I used to have my favorite high school teacher was named Mr. Hayes. And I remember going into Mr. Hayes' class for the first time. He was a creative writing teacher. And we all went in the first day of school. We all sat down at our desks. Mr. Hayes looks around the room and he said, "You poor devils." Was our introduction. And now I understand what he meant. I didn't at the time. But life starts out so pleasant, and then it ends up so difficult and so painful and so distracting and confusing. But that joy from childhood is actually innate in the soul. And when we reconnect with Krishna through this bhakti, through this giving, that which he already owns, just giving back to him, that reawakens that joyfulness that has been asleep for so many years. That's why people are crazy enough to practice Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada used to say, "I am not paying these boys and girls to chant Hare Krishna." So how could I cannot pay them. How could I afford them? But because it is dormant in our hearts to have this relationship with Krishna, therefore it comes out spontaneously in all of us, regardless of who we are, regardless of where our background has been, and none of that matters because it's dormant in our heart. So I had this other experience I want to share with you when I was just a few months after going in the Ganga for the first time. I met Srila Prabhupada in Chicago. I had seen Prabhupada before, but this was the first time I was being introduced to Srila Prabhupada. So I was with a group of my colleagues, and our senior mentor said, "Srila Prabhupada, this is this person, this is this person." And Prabhupada was looking around at us one at a time. So we all had this tremendous ambition to have Prabhupada's association. So here was happening, and I was being introduced to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada looked at me, and I felt like melting into the floor. That was just, again, a very visceral reaction. I was not expecting it. I was very much in awe of Srila Prabhupada, bringing this joy to the lives of so many people. And he was a very unassuming person, a very modest person. And but anyway, when he looked at me, I just felt the best adjective I can think of is inadequate. I felt inadequate. I felt I did not deserve to be there, that I wasn't worthy of being there, that I was, I felt like he was looking through me and seeing millions of lives of sin. And I felt naked and exposed. And I did not know how to respond other than paying my little pranams. And so, reflecting back on that, I understand now that my feelings of inadequacy were based on a lack of knowledge, and especially a lack of self-acceptance. So self-acceptance is something that we all wrestle with to one degree or another. For many of us, earlier in life, it's harder to accept ourselves. Later in life, it becomes easier because you kind of find out that's all you got to work with. So, self-acceptance allows us to enhance and deepen our reciprocation with Krishna. How is that? Because when we're offering to Krishna and we're feeling the joy of bhakti, we understand that Krishna accepts us. We understand that all of the pressure of this world to excel or to do this or that is superfluous to our real source of happiness. No matter what we accomplish in this world, it's not going to compare with the simple joy of reciprocating with Krishna. And as we reciprocate, we feel more calm, we feel more self-accepting. Okay, Krishna accepts me. Krishna accepts me. It does not matter, nothing matters. Krishna is accepting this little offering that I'm giving him. So with that, if I knew then what I know now, I would have said to Srila Prabhupada, thank you, some words of appreciation. Thank you for what you have given me. You know, I would have acknowledged myself as worthy of receiving this gift. And I would have said, thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I am so appreciative of everything that you've done. But I could not find that thought did not even begin to cross my mind at the time. So how to enhance our self-acceptance? This is our challenge in bhakti. To deepen our experience, first of all, we should understand that the concepts we have of who we are largely based on the bodily concept of life. That we are born in such and such a family, such and such a country, such and such a gender, such and such a race, all of this that we've been brought up with our whole life, such an ethnic group, all of this is just superfluous. Anarto pashanam sakshat, bhakti yoga adhosate. The great sage Srila Vyasadeva, seeing how all of these superficial designations were affecting people. Therefore, he is Chakre Samhita Samhitam. He has compiled Srimad Bhagavatam to benefit people who are thus encaged in material concepts of life. Self-acceptance doesn't mean, like in the contemporary sense, like everybody gets a participation trophy. You know, we want everybody to feel good about themselves. And we don't want there to be winners and losers. That isn't the meaning of it. Self-esteem and self-acceptance are two different things. Self-esteem means, well, I'm really like who I am, right? Self-acceptance means I am what I am. Like those of you old enough to remember Popeye, I am what I am, and that's all that I am. Well, that's a good mantra. To a certain extent. Good can of spinach. Self-acceptance means I no longer have to measure myself against other people. Some will be better, some will be worse. There's a saying that if we compare ourselves to other people, only two things will happen. We'll get comes out of it. Compare ourselves to other people, we'll either get puffed up, I'm better, or we'll feel bitter. I got a raw deal in this body. So no, what's the point? Self-acceptance means we no longer feel that compulsion to compare ourselves to other people. And self-acceptance means we no longer identify with our particular material background. Self-acceptance means Jivara Swarupa Hoy Nitya Krishna Dat. This is all I am. This joy of serving Krishna is what I'm built for, is what I'm made for. This is, now I'm back in the position that I belong in. Just like if a screw falls out of an expensive machine, in and of itself, the screw has very little value. But when it's in its place and the machine functions properly, then it's very valuable. So our position is in the cosmic creation. We are here to serve God. That's why we were born. That's why we're created. That's what we are. We accept ourselves in that capacity. We are entitled to really rail down that highway of bliss on and on and on. And there's no end to it. So self-acceptance is enhanced by association with other people on the spiritual path. Self-acceptance is encouraged when we all understand who we are and we see beyond the bodily concept. So this is why, for example, in the association of devotees, we address each other as Prabhu. Prabhu means what?
Master.
Master. I'm the servant. I'm your servant. And you please tell me, how can I serve you? Because if you're pleased, I know Krishna is pleased. Pleasing you is offering one more palmful of water to the Ganga. So you please allow me to engage in that service. So we call each other Prabhu just to remind ourselves. When Srila Prabhupada started the Krishna consciousness movement in the West, he told everybody, all of his disciples, call each other Prabhu. So these young, passionate hippies could begin to understand the depth of the service mood. Now, Prabhu means sir in India, at least it's taken that way, right? It's a masculine noun. Prabhi is the feminine. But Prabhupada did not make this fine distinction. He really didn't. He never introduced that word, although it's grammatically correct. He just said, everyone just call each other Prabhu. That's enough for you all. So he referred to his female disciples as Prabhu. So talk to Shilavati Prabhu about this. Talk to Jamuna Prabhu, Malati Prabhu. In this way, you see in many references, he used the masculine just to help us understand how serving each other would enhance our bhakti. Okay. So this is Krishna House lore. We take this from Srila Prabhupada's early days and make it easy for people to enter the realm of bhakti. We just do it very simply, call each other Prabhu Bas. Now, later, Srila Prabhupada introduced Krishna consciousness in India. It's the land of Krishna consciousness where it had been obscured. And of course, he was trying for decades to do that and no one was interested. But when he took his Western disciples back, then people got interested. You see, okay, well, this is universal philosophy India has. India has something valuable. For centuries, India was dominated by the West, saying Indian culture is no good, only Western culture. But when the Westerners came, taking their culture, they were very, very moved. And then Krishna consciousness took off in India like anything. So in India, people saw the young Westerners, boys and girls. This was something different. Generally, there's no ladies' ashrams in India, or if there are, they're only very cloistered for nuns. But Prabhupada's ashrams, there were men's side, women's side, Prabhupada's temple rooms, men and women, all the services were done together because that was appropriate in the Western venue. So in India, people found that questionable. And Prabhupada questioned right back. He said, well, what are you doing to spread Krishna consciousness? You criticize me for allowing the men and women in the West to adopt Krishna consciousness in their culture, and it's working. But you're, no, women over here, men over here, and you can't do anything. You're very pragmatic like that. But he introduced, in India, he said, okay, you can call women Mataji instead of Prabhu. Mataji is a term of endearment in India. It's not a pejorative. It's not derogatory. It's a term of endearment. That an educated man should never look. It's not for the woman's benefit. It's for the man's benefit. The man who says Mataji to a woman is saying it to reduce his sexual desires. because Mataji means mother. I look at a woman as my mother. Oh, not as a sex object. You see, that's the tradition. It's not because the women have a problem. It's because the men have a problem. So Mataji. But in the West, if you call some young woman, oh, Mataji, it's at best weird and at worst insulting. Right? Oh, Mataji. I mean, then there's this aroma of sexism that comes with it. And it's very unpalatable. It's considered very ignorant. So these are cultural things that need to be considered. And to insist, no, we have to do it the traditional Vedic way. And if you want to be a Krishna conscious person, you have to do the strict traditional Vedic way. This is like, it just doesn't work. The strict Vedic way, or are we going to spread Krishna consciousness? Are we going to share the joy of bhakti with others? Or are we going to be adhering to all the detailed rules and regulations? Are we going to put varnashram ahead of bhakti? Or are we going to put bhakti ahead of varnashram? So what may work in India is India's consideration, but we know it works in the West. And what works in the West is helping people gain a sense of self-acceptance in bhakti yoga. This is why we serve one another by accepting one another and encouraging one another to be devotees, because we can, in this way, offer palmfuls of water to the Ganga. Krishna doesn't need any one of us, but he needs all of us, if that makes sense. In other words, there's no one person whose needs are so important we can sacrifice the welfare of others. But everyone is Krishna's part and parcel, therefore everyone is welcome in Krishna's family. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any comments or reflections? Boy, that hand went up fast. I'm not sure if I want to call on you. No, we got one.
Okay, thank you so much, Prabhu. Is it safe to say that unless we have that self-acceptance with ourselves, it will be very difficult, almost impossible to accept others around us?
Yes, this is the problem, right? If we are insecure in ourselves, then we want to put others down to try to build up some false sense of value. We're insecure in ourselves. We magnify whatever we accomplish in, like, as if it was really extraordinary. The pauper is proud of his penny, Prabhupada said. So the point is that we, one devotee said to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I'm your most fallen devotee. And Prabhupada said, you're not the most anything. Neither the most fallen nor the least fallen, simply insignificant. This is self-acceptance. It's easy to accept ourselves if we understand we're insignificant. But that can't be done, artificially. Just saying we're insignificant is not insignificant. Can I tell you a joke in that regard? This helps me remember this point. So there was a temple in the poor ghetto Jewish part of town, and there was just one rich man in the town, or a few. So anyway, the rabbi was given an impassioned sermon, and then the rich man ran from the back of the temple, threw himself before the altar, and said, "Rabbi, I am nothing. I'm nothing." And everyone was moved to tears. And the rabbi went on, and then another rich man from the back went running forward, threw himself before the altar. "I am nothing. I am nothing." Everyone was just sobbing. And then the janitor ran from the back, threw himself before the altar. "Rabbi, I'm nothing. I'm nothing." And the one rich guy says to the other, "Look who thinks he's nothing." All right. Other reflections? Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. That's a really nice class. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this topic of titles in ISKCON, because I know it can just cause controversy, or a lot of people can get an upheaval around it. And so I've thought about like what that is in the cultural context and so on. It's a very interesting discussion, but I wanted to just add a couple of points to it.
Please.
And one thing that I've seen and personally, and as well as like sometimes when other ladies are bothered by being called Mataji, is because it kind of brings gender as the most salient factor, as opposed to what you said with Prabhu, which is bringing the soul or the spirit, the spiritual component, which is what Prabhupada intended, like a title of respect as a devotee of Krishna. So I think that that's one of the issues that comes up. It's like, oh, you're first and foremost a woman and then a devotee, whereas we want the other way. So I think that's one of the reasons it's not so appreciated in sometimes in some contexts. And then the other thing was, I was thinking back to my childhood when, because I grew up in ISKCON and I grew up late 80s and the 90s and so on. I don't remember, the term Mataji wasn't used in my community. I didn't hear it. So we did say mother sometimes, but it was for seniors like who are equivalent to our mother of that age. So for example, like my teacher, like Mother Urmila, we would say that. And I know that in Hridayananda Das Goswami's written article describing like the Bhagavatam, he's taken the Bhagavatam and looked at titles, and he said the term mother is often used when it's either an aunt or a direct mother or some mother figure, an actual mother figure. But it's not used in the context of like a sister type. So if we're peers, it's a bit awkward. It just feels a bit strange.
Yes.
I think it would have been weird if I was growing up in Gurukul and the boys had called me Mataji. It would have felt very strange because we were peers. We were, so anyway, that's just one thought. And then one other point was that the term Mataji is actually Hindi, and so it's not really Vedic term in that sense. It's the G is the Hindi part of it, and so it's the Sanskrit would be like Mata or something like that, but we've taken the Hindi word.
G means dear mother. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So let me ask the ladies, who here would prefer to be called Mataji? Anybody? Going once? Okay. All right. So now we know. So gentlemen, you should never refer to anyone in Krishna house as Mataji. Is that all right? All right. Gender to the top when we're not these bodies, in fact.
And if we call them Mataji somehow, they can call us father.
Yes.
Papaji.
Papaji. Yes. You are entitled. No, just Papaji. Papaji will do. Papa means sin.
By this I'm respect, dear sin.
Okay.
What's the simple one?
Wait a minute.
What's the simple one?
Yes.
That's the simple one.
My dear sinful one. Yeah? All right, is that fair? So every Mataji earns one Papaji. Vaishnavi. But for a 19-year-old young lady, why am I being singled out? I have a friend, a lady who is, she graduated with a high degree in college and moved into the ashram. She just couldn't wait to finish her master's degree, and then she moved in the ashram. And this was a particular temple where there's a very conservative mood. And a few weeks later, she's saying, "I've never felt so much like my body before I moved into this ashram," because there was so much gender discrimination. Okay, women over here, men over here, Mataji. So for our purposes, See, there's no reciprocation with Krishna higher than sharing Krishna consciousness, right? Krishna says that of all my servants, one who shares the message of Bhagavad Gita is most dear to me. So we have to ask ourselves, if our purpose is offering to Krishna, how can we offer to Krishna in the best way? In this environment, in this part of the world, offering without gender discrimination by far works best. So it's, again, depends on our purpose. Sometimes people say it's not cultured, and I again say bhakti trumps varnashram. Anyone else like to make a comment? Okay, please. Controversy. Okay, but I'm sorry, it's time for breakfast.
Yeah, I will reflect, just to be devil's advocate, to push it further. One can say, well, yeah, we really don't want to focus on gender. And what about, and I'm not saying this is wrong or anything, I'm just asking, what if, like, then we push further, like, well, we just use the pronouns they and so forth for everyone. And like, yeah, how far does it go? Yeah, I'm just trying to.
No, that's a very pertinent question, because gender identity has become much more prominent in our society, and some people prefer to be addressed by pronouns that are neither masculine nor feminine. So we should understand this is also, even though it's allegedly neutral, it's still a gender identification. Okay. Srila Prabhupada was confronted on this point. Men and women intermingling is very incompatible with spiritual practice, right? Because one of our regulative principles is celibacy until marriage. And so he said that, no, for practical reasons, we have the women on this side and the men on this side. So he did not create another ashram for, say, bisexual or gender fluid individuals. Now, there's a men's ashram and a women's ashram. Now, will it come to a point where maybe there could be, perhaps, but I doubt it. Because the whole point is to be very simple in our spiritual training. And so there's no harm in identifying male or female, even if there is some ambiguity in our own individual lives. And that's just practical. Prabhupada used that word. It's practical. We need a men's ashram, women's ashram. So, it's a real issue. And when Prabhupada was asked about transgender individuals, he said, choose one and stick with it. Choose one gender and stick with it. That's the best we can do, as far as my understanding is concerned. What do you think? I mean, you're the manager.
I often think about how to keep up with times, and at the same time, the Krishna consciousness is such an old tradition, and there's so much Indian culture and tradition that comes along with it. Yeah, I guess I often think and brainstorm about how will it go hand in hand. And of course, it's funny because actually when I went to school I studied in one of my poli science courses, we studied different theories, and one of the theories was feminism. And interestingly, I actually appreciated the theory a lot, because the focus of feminism is to actually not focus on the body, even though it's called feminism. But actually they say, yeah, because they want everybody to be themselves. And so it's very similar to ours, like, you just let everybody be themselves and their spirit, soul, and so forth, which interesting. I actually very, very much resonated with the idea of feminism. So I'm just trying to think, yeah, how do we accommodate everybody? But at the same time, it doesn't get too far so that we end up focusing on the body again.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the point. We want to minimize our identification with the body for our spiritual training. So keeping it very simple. It's like anyway, we could go on, but I hope that addresses your question. Prabhu, you want to get that? Shruti, can you part with your microphone?
Hare Krishna. You also made like a lot of wonderful points throughout the class. So I had a question on one of them, like you were describing about this feeling of inadequacy, or is this like being insignificant, accepting that we are insignificant? So, but how do we take that into consideration, but also have the desire to strive to be better, like better human being, better person? Like, yeah, how do we like have that mindset?
Right, but the mode of passion compels us to compete with others. So the mode of goodness is self-acceptance. And yet within self-acceptance, how do we be the best person we can be, as opposed to becoming complacent, saying, oh, okay, I'm all right, I don't have to, yeah. If we see our lives as an offering to Krishna, we want to make them the best we possibly can. So if we see in that respect, okay, let me do the very best for Krishna that I can possibly do, make the best offering I can possibly make. And it is for Krishna's credit. And Prabhupada could do that, or a pure devotee can act very boldly, very aggressively, very constructively in the service of Krishna without getting attached to the results of the work. The credit is all Krishna, the credit is all my Guru Maharaj. You see, didn't we hear often hear Srila Prabhupada say these things? Even though people were appreciating him, he was always deflecting. Yeah.
That's the acceptance, not getting attached to the result.
Yes.
We try very hard, but we fail. That produces acceptance.
We try very hard. If it doesn't work out, then we accept, okay, Krishna didn't want me to do this. Krishna has some other plan. Again, Srila Prabhupada would often say that. Okay. I wanted to ask Amy to say a few words. Amy is a very interesting person who has come to Krishna consciousness a little later in life and has some experience dealing with these gender issues. Could you share, would you, everybody, what you shared with me the other day?
I don't remember exactly what I shared with you.
Well, just your experience in coming in this quasi-conservative environment.
Yeah. It's been probably the biggest challenge and probably one of the hottest topics that Prabhuji and I speak about. I visit a lot of temples. I also come from I was married and divorced young, and I raised a child, and so I've been on my own for quite some time. I've been in corporate America for over 20 years. And so my perspective has been always coming from kind of what you were talking about the definition of feminist is not feminine, it's equal, it's the same. It's it's a perspective that I've been in this situation where I've been passed over for employment opportunities, for raises, for quite a bit because of my gender. I was in banking, and it's predominantly white men, and they have a way of doing things, and even now in 2023 it's still that way. So it's been a struggle for me, because I felt like I came to Krishna consciousness with a an open heart and really a lot of curiosity, and I was like, oh, it's here too.
Mm.
It's here too. It's even in God's house. So that's been a struggle, and it's a struggle every day, and hearing things like what I've heard today is always helpful. I think it's separating, for me, it's been a consistent effort of separating culture, be it Western culture or Eastern culture, from truth, from where we're, what's actually, from what's actually our goal, our true north, so to speak. That's been super helpful. It's also been helpful just reinforcing. You started to allude to a little bit of what's important, the strict Vedic teachings or writings, or the reality of where we are today. And recently contemplating, that was a different time. We have to evolve or become extinct. I'm a true believer of that. And so I think for me, I bucket these conversations of this is Shastra, these are the teachings.
Mhm.
And then there's the translation,
Mhm.
and then there's the purport and the commentary, and then there's the discussion. And I really feel like the discussion is the jewel.
Hmm.
That's where we find relevancy in what we're learning, and that's where we determine and figure out how to apply it to our lives in 2023.
Such a beautiful point. Thank you. And I just would like to add, if I may, as a privileged male, that the women in Krishna consciousness put up with things that I don't think I could, or most of my peers could have put up with. The devotees who have survived, the women, have been marginalized in the name of Vedic culture. Chapter 2 of the Gita, just in many places in the Gita, Krishna puts down this idea of Vedic standards as secondary. So why they get introduced, I don't know. But for the women who are looking at Krishna consciousness, I really want to encourage you that, as Gandhi said, you have to be the change that you want to see in the world. The worst thing to do is say, oh, this movement is prejudiced against women, I'm leaving. Just stay, no, I'm staying, and I'm going to make it right. That's what's needed. So this is sort of the Kurukshetra field for the women, is your battle. And men, if you have enough, as much intelligence as the women, you will support them. Okay. Because, yeah, well, this is our service to Prabhupada. Last point from our soon to be leaving us Narottam Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. I was just thinking from a more practical point of view for someone like me, because since childhood I have had this conditioning of, I've been conditioned to address women devotees as Mataji, growing up in India.
Yes.
And being here in US, it was a learning experience for me. It took me some time to come to terms with a lot of different things which were culturally different, but I understood the mood and the need. What I was thinking is, also in my experience, I did come across a number of, like, through my travels across US and even at Krishna House, I've realized a number of American women actually are not bothered if I do address them as Mataji. They're not offended. And some who are, they openly express that, I don't want to be addressed as Mataji. For peers, I usually tend to use the first name, just, as a friendly or as a sister, I just use the first name. And for elderly devotees, I tend to use mother or Mataji. What I was saying is, what do you think about this, that if someone is genuinely offended, they express it, and then we make an effort to then not address them as Mataji,
right? Or,
in that way.
It can be a little cumbersome, but a gentleman will ask a woman, how would you like to be addressed? That's all. It takes that. And that actually is very endearing to a person. I want to address you in a way that you appreciate. And I do that when I don't know. And I get various answers. Some people say this way, some people say that way. Many times they say, I don't care. Just don't call me late for prasadam. Okay. Okay. All right. So speaking of which, we'll stop there. The prasadam in outside today? Oh, okay. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Govinde, Brahmani Vaishnave, Rajan Vishwashanaya.
Motion persist of faith in Mahaprasad, spiritual food and of the Lord, the deity of Sri Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Transcendental Krishna in the Vaishnavas,